Hi, everyone, and welcome to Picard Cast. I am, as always, Brooke, and I'm here with my wonderful, fabulous co-host, Rebecca.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. And of course, as always, we are not alone. We have our friend Dan from the Heroes of Noise podcast and the Word podcast. If you like Preacher, take a listen. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So we're glad that you could be here. Just to let our audience know, what is your relationship with Star Trek? You know, how did you go about wanting to watch this? Like, did you decide this was one you wanted to watch, or, you know, that kind of thing?
Okay, fair enough. I can answer both of those questions. So, Star Trek was always on in my house as a kid. Now, I don't want to speak blasphemy, but I grew up a little more partial to Star Wars. But at the same time, my dad was really big into Star Trek. So I recall it being on the weekends all the time. There was something very calming about the ambience of that show. I don't know if it's just like the background, what do you call it? Just the machinery in the background, that calming kind of whir that's always there, you know? But I just really, something about Star Trek, is particularly the original series, brings back this nostalgia with me of sitting there with my dad and watching it. And, you know, I admit sometimes I wasn't always paying attention. I was quite little at the time. But it was something that it became like a comfort food thing with me. I'm not as versed in Star Trek as I am in other things, but I've always had this great appreciation for it. I've always loved the characters. It's just always been, like I said, like a comfort food thing. Anytime it's on, it stays on just because of the way that it makes me feel. I don't know if that sounds weird or not, but it's like, you know, there's certain people that you can hear talk, and you just want to hear them talk and talk and talk. It's kind of like that with that show and the ambience of that show. And even more so with The Next Generation. I found that I was a little more partial to that one, I think mostly because I was of an age that I could truly understand a lot of what was going on with it. But I did appreciate the political correctness in it, and just the way that it evolved right away. Like even from the beginning, you know, instead of saying, you know, to boldly go where no man has gone before, it went to boldly go where no one has gone before. I'm like, oh, good on you, Picard. But good on, you know what I mean? Good on you. And I always liked that. And I thought that it was a little bit more, like it taught a little bit more about, you know, or I should say, I was going to say today, but the morals back then. And just this, like, it was like a little bit more socially aware to me, I think. At least that's how it, you know, rubbed off on me. But I was always like an action figure guy. So I had a bunch of Star Trek figures. I had Star Trek figures of the characters I didn't even know. I kind of like, you know, bled them all together and just had like this crazy space war. But Star Trek is special to me. It's just that I would not be able to call myself a super fan, but I'm starting to really appreciate it. And I can say that because of this, to answer the second part of the question, well, the reason that I chose this one is because they said, do you want to, I think it was Rebecca said, do you want to record and talk about Descent? And I'm like, yes, I would absolutely love to. So I ended up watching. I'm not going to lie to you.
One episode left.
Yes.
You want it, Dan?
Technically two, but it's one story.
Yeah, it was like, you get this and you don't throw a fit. But no, it was cool. And I'm glad that I really liked this episode. But, you know, it sparked like this newfound love for it. And my wife Gail and I are actually going back and rewatching all of it now.
Awesome.
I don't know where like the Orville fits into this. I know that it's taken away a lot from Star Trek: The Next Generation, at least in my opinion. But I think that because I liked that show, it made this one a little more palpable for me, again, as an adult, and I'm really enjoying it. And again, that calming thing is still there. So we're really enjoying it so far. I'm in like all the way now.
Mm-hmm. Nice. All right. So since I forgot to say that we were covering The Descent, but you did mention it, we were covering The Descent, and we're going to be doing part 1 this episode. You'll have to tune in next week for part 2. This is from season 6, episode 26, so it's the last episode of the season. I actually have 2 original air dates, which was weird because Wikipedia had June 21st of 1993, but IMDb said it was June 19th, so I didn't do any more digging to figure it out. So it was June. It was the last episode of the season. It was directed by Alexander Singer, and the story was Jerry Taylor who did it, but then Ronald D. Moore did the teleplay, so, you know, they sort of had to work together. And a side note, Jerry Taylor is from Evansville, Indiana, and that's just across the river from where I grew up in Kentucky, so that's really exciting. And she's still around. She's 81. She's done a lot of like producing and writing and all that, and you know, she's still kicking it, so that's exciting.
Oh, bless her
Good
heart.
for her.
Yeah.
You know, but before we go any further, I know, Brooke, you told me before we started recording I should bring it up, and of course, then I forgot.
Yes, I know.
So we're recording this, full disclosure, in December, early December, and in the previous episode we talked about we had lost some people in Trek. Well, we've lost actually 2 more people in Trek.
Wow.
We just lost Rene Auberjonois, which, if you are a Star Trek fan, you know he played Odo on Deep Space Nine, but he had an incredibly long career playing many recognizable characters. You probably remember him from Benson. You probably remember him from Boston Legal. He was the original Father Mulcahy in the MASH movie. He was the voice of the French chef in the Little Mermaid cartoon from Disney. So, you know him from something. And then about a day or 2 after we heard about Renee's passing, Marina Sirtis, who plays Counselor Deanna Troi, her husband passed away. So, sort of in the Trek family too, we've had 2 deaths, and adding to the loss of the actor who played Nog, also on Deep Space Nine.
I was about to ask if we had recorded since Nog had passed.
I don't think we have. So, it's been a while. So, unfortunately, rest in peace. And, now's a great time to jump in and watch Deep Space Nine again if you haven't in a while, because I think if you go back and watch Deep Space Nine, you'll be really blown away by how incredible Renee's performance as Odo is. Every week to sit in that chair and get that makeup put on, to have that face look like it has no features.
Right.
And absolutely incredible.
He's definitely the Data of that group.
Yes.
Because
I totally agree on that.
He's trying to be as human as possible, but he doesn't understand it exactly. So he pulls that off really well, because he is a great actor, just like Brent Spiner. So, or was. Yeah. So, anyway, so thank you for.
I just kind of wanted to jump in with that before I forgot.
Yep, that's good.
May they rest in peace.
Indeed.
The synopsis of this episode is: during an encounter with the Borg, Data feels his first emotion when he gets angry with the cybernetic race. So we're going to get racist Data. That's what it sounds like.
Data is racist.
So in the first scene...
Always knew it.
Yeah.
So in the first scene, we see Data playing poker. Oh, this is a cold open, everyone. We see Data playing poker. He's got Einstein and Sir Isaac Newton and Stephen Hawking. So Einstein is played by Jim Norton. He is an Irish actor who also appeared in season 4 episode The Nth Degree, where he was talking to Barclay, when Barclay became a genius. And it's so kind of funny to me. I found out that he was Irish and not, German. Then the guy who plays Sir Isaac Newton, I did not write down his name because I forgot to, but if you watch the X-Files, he's one of the guys in the sort of like shadow organization that the Smoking Man is in and all that kind of thing. So he's called like the well-dressed man or something like that. And then Stephen Hawking is played by Stephen Hawking. So that's exciting. But side note, Brent Spiner, when he found out that Stephen Hawking was going to be in this, he thought he might be playing Stephen Hawking. At least that's what he said. And then was excited when he found out Stephen Hawking was going to be there, but said, because he is a jokester, but I think this guy will cost me my Emmy. Because, he likes being silly. But a cool thing I found out is that Stephen Hawking was a huge Star Trek fan, and it came to light when Leonard Nimoy did a did an introduction at like a thing for one of Hawking's books, and his agent suggested to him to, oh, hey, he's a real big fan. Yeah, he'll be on it if you want him to. And so they asked him to be on here, and he was super excited. He got to go sit in the captain's chair, which was something he really wanted to do. He called the studio afterward. He says in one of his books that he called the studio afterward and asked about his poker winnings, if they could give him that, and they said that they didn't know what the exchange rate would be, which I thought was hilarious. And a weird thing, he wanted to be put into a closet in between scenes so that he could just like think. But he didn't want any kind of distractions, and I was like, that's crazy. Like, he just wanted to do his thing. I also saw that he said when they went on the tour of the set that when they go past the warp core, he said, I'm working on that.
I mean, the guy was a huge genius, and wrote books that are like completely way over my head. I mean, the stuff that he just churned out was no way could I understand it. Mm-hmm. And I do not doubt that if Stephen Hawking had lived, he probably would have figured out a way to make warp a reality.
Right.
Yeah. No, he was a very prolific scientist, of course. Can you imagine being like having so many thoughts in your head that you're just like, I need to be alone so I can think. I have so many thoughts in my head. Like, that's just incredible.
Right?
Somebody put me in the closet so I can process all this information.
So I can just think. Yeah.
Yeah, and he probably did. He probably did walk around the set too. Like, yeah, I could do that.
Well,
it needs a little work.
He didn't
I got
walk
this all in my
around
head.
the set.
Oh,
right.
roll. Okay,
Yeah, but
touche.
I don't mean to be rude.
No, you're being quite factual.
He is the only person that's been on the Next Generation who has played themselves, so that was interesting, I thought, because there's been a lot of guest stars, but there's also been a lot of guest characters who have been real people, but they, obviously Isaac Newton wasn't alive anymore, Einstein wasn't alive anymore, Mark Twain, any of those people. None of them are alive, so they couldn't play themselves. But there's a point, I wrote this down because I just thought it was hilarious, that Isaac Newton is like, I invented physics, and he was talking about the day that the apple fell on his head, that it was the biggest deal in science, and Data says that he thought that was apocryphal, and he's right, because the apple didn't fall on his head. He was just walking and he saw it fall, and but he did. One of them said, oh, not this story again, or whatever, not the apple story again, because apparently Einstein told that story a lot, just he never told anybody that it hit him on the head. So I thought that was cool. So something else that's apocryphal is that he asked Einstein, well, can you do basic arithmetic? And because it's this wrong, quote unquote, fact that Einstein was bad at math as a kid. That's not true. He was always really brilliant. The greatest
very
of kids.
Verbal, I think, right? Is that true? I don't know if that's true. I read that somewhere, that Einstein was not very verbal as a child.
Yeah. And like, he did really advanced math and stuff as a child, but he just was, more like asocial, I guess, and a little bit, and he was sort of odd and all that kind of thing. But yeah, he just had a lot of things going on in his head, obviously.
Sure.
So, they're laying down their cards, and Hawking